Hello, marketers. I hope that you're staying safe and enjoying the change of seasons wherever you might be. I'm absolutely embracing fall here in Texas. I'm Diana Richardson, the social media and community manager for the agency team here at SEMrush. And I'm really grateful to be able to spend this time with you today. So, in the chat, let me know where you all are from. I love getting to know where you all are tuning in from. Kind of makes me feel like I'm connected to the world in some way. And we have a really interesting webinar today. You won't regret spending an hour with us, I promise. So put an emoji in the chat if you have ever been told by a client, I'm not getting any sales. Right? So today we're talking about the difference between marketing and sales and how it can be a fine line. And I also want to know from you guys, how do you define that difference, the difference between marketing and sales when you're talking to your clients? We're going to talk about expectation setting and all the different nuances on this topic today. So let me know your thoughts in the chat. While you're thinking and responding, I'm going to introduce our two stellar guests today. First, we are starting off with a longtime SEMrush friend. She's an international SEO and content expert with a career that started more than 13 years ago. Her last role was as an SEO and content director at Outbrain, and she just so happens to be a fellow woman in tech SEO member like myself. So please welcome Liraz Postan to the webinar.
Hello. Hey, how are you?
Did I say your last name right?
Yeah, everything is
okay. I didn't know if it was Postan or like Boston, but with a P, or Postan, like a soft O or hard O.
It's Postan, yeah. It's basically
Postan.
like
okay, good. I nailed it on the first try.
Yeah, like a post on WordPress. So this is how you remember it.
How are you?
Great, all good. Very excited. Again, it was like a long time since I've done like a SEMrush webinar. So I'm really
I know. And we took a little break in September, just from the webinars, and then this will be our last one for the year. So I'm glad that it's going to be such an interesting topic today. I'm so excited to get the conversation going.
Me too.
So our partner in crime here today, our other part of this conversation, is the CEO and co-founder of Usurp, a performance-driven digital PR and SEO agency. He leads global SEO campaigns for brands like Monday.com, ActiveCampaign, Freshworks, and many more. Just a few brands you may have heard of. His expertise has been highlighted by Entrepreneurs, Search Engine Journal, Business Insider, and he contributes regularly to us here at SEMrush. So let's welcome Jeremy Moser to the webinar. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be really awesome. How have things been in your agency world lately?
It's been good. It's been hectic. We've been growing really rapidly and onboarding lots of new team members. So all fun stuff, but keeping me busy.
Okay, so we kind of talked about this offline, but I want to get the audience to tune in. Hello, Frank C. Tell us where you guys are from. Liraz, where are you tuning in from today?
I'm from Israel.
Ooh, what part of Israel?
Like, let's say 40 minutes drive from Tel Aviv, from the right center.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, like a really nice suburban place where kids can go without any busy roads. Really fun. Still hot in here. Started to rain. Still hot.
Still hot here in Texas as well. And how about you, Jeremy? Jeremy, you had a really interesting change of location recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from San Francisco, but my wife and I moved out to Hawaii. We're on the island of Oahu, so we're going to be here for at least 6 months or so. My co-founder as well, he lives on Kauai, so different Hawaiian island, but sort of a little bit of the inspiration to move out here. And yeah, it's a nice change of pace from the city life.
And at least you're in the same time zone.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Different islands, same time zone. So David asked the first question in our live chat that I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the way. He wants to know, is it pronounced SEMrush or SEMrush? And it is officially, as of 2 Decembers ago, SEMrush.
There's a whole video about it. A whole video.
There's a whole shebang. We did a whole marketing rebrand about it. But it catches me too, because I like to say I grew up with calling it SEMrush because I use the tool as a digital marketer myself before we did the rebrand, when I now that I'm on this end of it and we did the rebrand, it is officially SEMrush. But if you call it SEMrush, it's okay. You won't get any hate from us. It is what it is, right?
It's also written differently. It's always it's like now it's written differently. It's not
it is, yes.
Rush.
That's correct. Less capital letters as well.
Totally.
But I also like what David had to say, because this is definitely on topic for the conversation. And he said, clients regularly say conversions are softer than they need. But is that a marketing problem to solve? I don't know. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to give you guys one quick note before we launch right into it. You can ask questions live in the chat as we're going along. Clearly, I can see them. We've already been talking about them so far during this webinar. So feel free to jump in. Sorry, there is noise outside my window. Go ahead and type in the questions in the live chat. I'll read them as we go. I can put them on the screen for Liraz and Jeremy to answer as the conversation goes. This is a conversation, guys. So join in. We're all here to learn from each other. So we have an hour, so we're going to kick it off. I'm going to start with Jeremy. Jeremy, tell us, what is the difference between marketing and sales, as if explaining it to a client?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the first things we like to do on client calls is really identify their goals on the initial call and kind of get ahead of the game. It's actually one of the first questions we want to be asking, or that we ask personally, even before we, engage with a client in the sales process with them on a call, preferably, is really what their current goals are and what sort of gaps they need us to fill. So what we're really looking for there is, are we on the marketing end or are we on the sales end? And the biggest difference there is usually in the service that you provide. So it might be different depending on, what you're doing for them, whether it's, bottom of the funnel content, whether it's awareness driven content. Your goals and KPIs should really align with the service that you're providing. And so in our case, for example, we're really on the content side of things when it comes to SEO, a lot of content, a lot of digital PR. So a lot of what we're doing is more on that middle of the funnel to even top of the funnel, building a lot of awareness at scale. And so we have to be really open and communicative with them in the sense that, we're driving a lot of top of the funnel awareness. We're driving a lot of brand awareness. We're probably driving some leads that are softer as a whole, but we're not responsible necessarily for driving them bottom of the funnel leads unless that's a specific campaign we're running. So we like to identify really quickly with them what exact goals are around the specific pieces of content we create. And that usually starts by just identifying their goals as a bottom line.
Right. And you touched on something that I think is the key here, and that's the word goals, and aligning those with our strategy. And that's, I think, what we're going to get into today too. So Liraz, what's your take on it? What do you think?
So I can totally relate to what Jeremy is saying. I think like for SEOs, most of the times, we do focus on the awareness at the top of funnel, and we do drive a lot of, let's say, high volume search volume keywords and things like that. And then from then you have the website that leads them to conversion of specific forms. You have the path, because, like the intent of a user for just getting an answer for what is, how to is very, very far from just, buying from you. So I think like if we as let's say, if I'm saying it right, like for SEO, if we work like alone, like in a silo where no one is basically building these paths inside this website. So this is more about, I would say, also the internal marketing team to combine this kind of a user journey inside a website, and to make sure that the top of the funnel leads are going through the mid funnel, and then of course going to a more specific case study, more specific webinar, more specific, I don't know, like a down a funnel content, a gated content that they can capture these leads. So when I'm looking at SEO perspective, it's part of the marketing team. Marketing team needs to also, with the help of SEO, identify the user intent and to grab this user down the funnel and with the proper user journey to convert it. And then when we're talking about leads, when I'm talking about leads, so for leads and sales, for the actual leads funnel to sales, so that's around the sales marketing, the sales team, sorry. So that's all around that, and how they know how to sell, they know how to do the proper work for them. And this is the main differences. Like we need to work together, sometimes it's like, sometimes a lot of companies forgetting it, that SEO is not something that you can do just SEO and ignore everything else. It's not going to cut it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we're getting some really great comments
Perfect.
right out of the gate on this. I mean, we've asked one question and already the conversation is happening in the chat. So I love that, because this is exactly why I chose this topic for a webinar, because it happens so often in agency life where marketing equals sales in the client's minds, and they don't understand like what part is our responsibility as the marketer versus theirs, and they don't accept sometimes the answer that, like, I can't predict the future and I can guesstimate and I have, prediction tools, but I can't ultimately tell you or guarantee anything. And in fact, companies like Google say, if you're somebody looking for marketing services, stay away from the people that promise guarantees, because we can't guarantee anything.
Exactly.
So I'm going to backtrack here in the chat, for example, and go to David's comment. He said, based on what, Jeremy, what you were saying, clients don't accept we're not responsible for bottom of the funnel. So I think that is part, like, so then how do we frame that conversation? So, because I mean, the client has to accept something at some point, but it's our job as marketers to educate. So how do we, or like, what are some of the ways that you guys explain bottom of the funnel and what is their responsibility on the sales versus you as the marketer? Like, how do you explain that to a client?
You want to take it? Me? I'll take it.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, it was in response to
it.
Jeremy's question, and yeah, Liraz, I want to hear your take on it as well. So
cool. I think like our role as marketers is to flag, alert things that are not functioning well, things that are not, they're maybe too complicated in the form fields for, for leads, the user experience, maybe the not right messaging. Maybe we're promising something that is very vague, and this is why it's not really selling. And I think like this is our role as marketers. In terms of sales, let's say we capture the leads, everything is working, for instance, everything is nice, but we captured the leads, but nothing coming out to sell, or maybe low conversions. This is also something to do with the brand. Is the brand well recognized? Is the sales team well responsive? Maybe they're not responsive. Maybe the lead, it's not getting answer and just moved out to another competitor. Or maybe they're sending too many communications, and that's something that the lead is like, I don't want to deal with this company. So we do need to flag, alert, test, QA some of the things that they're doing in order to understand our funnel in terms of where we at, because otherwise we'll just keep sending them traffic all the time and there'll always be complaints. So we just need to make sure that we're testing it and know the funnel of the other side, and cooperating with the sales team, cooperating with other marketing teams to bring the best of our efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think one really big key there is that you really want to identify their team structure as early as possible and have a really good overlap between sales and marketing. And so that means asking questions around who you're going to communicate with as a main point of contact. What's their role within the organization? How frequently do they communicate with sales? What does their sales team look like in that structure? Getting key information from them around their typical sales cycles can really help you basically sell more in terms of the marketing that you're doing for them, right? Proving the value there really comes down to what is the impact at the bottom line, and then also how long does it take to start seeing results from that, and tying that back to their sales cycle. So for example, if you're doing new SEO efforts for a company, and maybe it's going to take you a couple months to start seeing qualified visitors come in, their sales cycle might also be a couple months long too. So you need to set that expectation really early. And that comes with really just understanding how their company operates. If they're selling more high ticket or expensive deals, like to enterprise customers or software companies, then you might need to have that in mind in terms of your own strategy of, okay, even if we bring in these leads, it's going to be 2, 3, even upwards of 6 months for them to close a contract here. And so that can really inform your strategy to decide whether or not to target stuff that's a little more top of the funnel, that you're driving, awareness at a larger scale that maybe they can convert on something like a lead magnet or a softer CTA or retarget down the line, or whether or not you need to go for the bottom of the funnel really quickly. And so that just comes from an open and honest conversation with them, and really having that at the start to determine, what's their sales cycle, how long is it, who are you going to be working with, and sort of what goals do they have in the short term versus the long term.
What I love about what you both have just said is that it really points out the fact that there's no one size fits all. So every business is different and unique. Even if you work in the same industry, in the same niche, and you're kind of working with, so you work with lawyers, that seems to be coming up a lot lately. I don't know why, but you work with lawyers, so you think you kind of have this same pattern, but really the different businesses who have these different processes, and what works for lawyer A may not necessarily work for lawyer B because those parameters are different. And it's having those conversations and understanding the business structure and getting to know them personally that is going to make you guys and myself like a better marketer. And so I love that personalization approach, because sometimes I think we get into this process of scalability and do redo it so we can take on more and more clients. But then in that process, we lose the personalization and the ability to really structure our strategy to truly accomplish what they're wanting to do. And then also there's the listening piece. So, if you ask a client, like, what is your goal? They're always going to say more business. Of course, right? Like that's what everybody wants. But is that actually the goal we can achieve? Like you have to, judge it incrementally and start with this and build on the things that will eventually lead to sales. And I think having those open conversations and leading them through that incremental buildup is a great way to keep them involved, but then also expectation set. So first, because Jeremy, you mentioned a lot about like brand awareness. So first we have to make sure people know that you're there. Now that's not necessarily a conversion strategy. That's getting just more eyeballs on you. And then we move to this and then we move to that. So yeah, I think, having those conversations and the incremental stuff actually keeps them involved and helps the process along a lot. And then you also mentioned something, Jeremy, that I wanted to ask you both about too. Is it normal, or do you, in both of your experiences, do you work with your clients' sales teams?
It definitely depends on the client and who we're working with. So I like the point you made as well about there's really no one size fits all, in the sense that, even within that same industry or business type or, funding series round, there's so many different types of goals that different companies set. And it can also be determined too by like the greater market and the economy, things like that. Like if we're talking right now, companies are for sure more focused on how do we improve the bottom line? How do we tie all of our efforts directly back to sales, qualified leads, conversions, things like that, versus maybe a year ago, the landscape was very different, where folks were targeting more hyper growth at all costs. Let's invest as much as we can in the top line, the top of the funnel traffic, right? So there's definitely no one size fits all or easy conversation around that. But we do tend to like to work pretty closely with at least someone from the sales side to really understand, especially from a sales enablement perspective. And when we're talking about SEO as a whole, how can our content be used for multiple types of purposes, right? Beyond just acquiring, creating new demand, capturing existing demand. Our content pieces can also be used in the sales process. And so it's really key to understand with direct salespeople when they're talking to customers, what topics do they bring up that come up the most? What are the objections that they handle frequently? And what are the key reasons that someone chooses their business over another? And that can really help you inform, creating better content that's more targeted towards that customer profile.
Exactly. I also work closely with the sales team. Let's say once in 2 months or something like that, just a conversation, just to hear some challenges that they have, some materials that we can help with, and vice versa, they can help me with, or FAQs, things like that we can build up with this. Let's say maybe we can optimize the form for them along with the marketing team. Sometimes we try to differentiate block traffic coming to sales and see, okay, what are those people are looking for? Like maybe are there smaller businesses, or maybe they're just exploring, looking for information, what we can do in order to improve the sales response, maybe with automation, with bot response, or maybe some resources they can hand out. So these are the kind of things that we are trying to let's say when I'm doing collaboration between teams, that is very helpful. Let's say when I used to work with like for Outbrain, we basically created like a whole help center just by creating like the sales team working with the marketing team. They created like a huge help center with so many content, useful content, and it brought so many traffic to our site. So it was something that, the collaboration between teams and making everything holistic in terms of, corporation as a one big team can make a huge difference. And this is what I usually do with sales team, just trying to, because they're always like, the sales team is like, I have my KPIs, I have my goals, this is what I need to do. And please don't interrupt me because I don't need to, do a lot of things for marketing now. I just need to be with my goals. And whenever we talk with them, I explain that we can basically help them reach their KPIs, by automation, by improvements, by optimization, by cutting a little bit the forms, by, content creation, sales enablement, as Jeremy said. We can do so much together. So I think like I'm doing a lot of conversation with inside companies, whatever I can. I'm doing a lot of conversation. It's like it works really, really cool. I'm trying to get some actions out of it, and pick one or two that are very important, just like get it for execution.
That is a really interesting perspective because it almost sounds like you're in-house at that point when you're collaborating so highly as an agency with your client sales team. In that regard, it makes you more of an in-house person, or gives it more of an in-house person feel than a vendor or an agency feel. And I think that us on the agency side thrive for that. Like, we just want to be part of your business. We want to be part of your team. And by, instead of just having that one marketing person that you're in contact with, being in touch with the sales team and understanding, like you just said, like, here's my KPIs, here's my Q4 focus, like, don't interrupt me. If you just talk to me, maybe me, the marketer, can actually help you. So I think that's such a really interesting approach, and also a great way to become more ingrained in your client's business than just as a vendor. So I love that.
It doesn't happen with every business, but whenever business is allowing this, it's magic. It's clearly magic.
And it depends on your agency setup too, I think, because
exactly.
I've worked with two kinds. I've worked with an agency where I was churn and burn, where it was like, just take on as much as you can, recreate as much as you can. And I became close with, I would manage like over 100 accounts. And of those 100, I probably became close to like 4. And then I worked for a boutique agency, much like yours is right now, Liraz. And that was much more personalized. I had maybe 3 accounts. I was very well, in touch with all of them. I still am to this day, like, it was very much a relationship, and much better success. And it wasn't like, I felt the communication was stronger because then when they asked me a question and I said something, they trusted it, as opposed to on the churn and burn agency side, they thought I was giving them marketing speak, or I'm pulling something out of thin air to make an excuse. And, so
you got to find a mix here. It's like a mix that you need to find. It's like, that you're getting hired for being a professional at the end. So it's like, so you do need to alert, you do need to point out some deeper understanding. And I think like this is why you're hired. And when it's like, whenever a client, it's not all clients like this, but whenever a client lets you get in to their business and actually be part of it, it's gold. It's like, really, this is how it works. When it's not, it's like less working. Like, to be honest, it's like, it's okay. It's like, it's like, we can do whatever we want in terms of SEO, but it's like, we can always do more. It's like the edge. This is like the one thing that's missing. But
yeah, totally. Absolutely. That's a really good distinction. I think going from thinking of yourself as like just a vendor to like almost a fractional team is really what the goal that we've set out for ourselves, is that we want to be that fractional SEO team for a given company. So we embed really closely with them in things like, we'll be in their Slack channels, we'll be communicating with them on a daily basis. So like you mentioned, having 100 accounts is something that's super foreign to us. We mainly have somewhere around like 3 to 5 is pretty average for us. So we're really closely embedded with the clients that we work with. And I think that lends itself to being, getting greater access to things like sales enablement, speaking with the sales team, developing things more with the whole entire marketing mix so that you can prove your value a lot easier than just saying, I'm a vendor, I create X amount of deliverables for them on a monthly basis. And that's usually where you run into the biggest issues in terms of proving yourself or proving your worth, so to speak, from a sales perspective.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that experience, so say you're that business and you have that negative experience, how that sticks with them. So when they come to agencies, like either one of your agencies where it is very personalized and it is very ingrained, they kind of come with a lot of baggage and like negativity because of the overpromised churn and burn experiences from before. So it's interesting that that's still something that exists in the marketing world, when most of us, I think, just want to do good and like just want to be like the Liraz and Jeremys of the world and like produce results and be personal, but get you on the right track if you're a business looking for marketing. So I have a two-sided question, and one was my question and one comes from David in the audience, but they're related. So how do you tackle, like, what do you say to a client who's just ready to cancel because they're not getting any sales from your marketing efforts, yet you are seeing positive marketing results? Like, how do you have that kind of reframing conversation so they don't cancel?
Yeah, I think usually starting where you can with as much data as possible is always a good starting point to remove sort of any subjective, bias from the conversation. Because obviously, when it's coming from you and you're trying to prove your worth, if you don't have some sort of data to reference there, usually they're just gonna, they're not gonna believe you in some sense. If they're that, on the edge of canceling, they're gonna be hypersensitive to that. And so I think coming to the conversation with some sort of proof of data in the terms of, obviously this is going to differ depending on the services you have. But if you're trying to grow traffic as a whole, start doing your KPI reports around how, when did you start? What was the traffic growth before you started and what it is now? And so really come to the table with some sort of evidence in terms of where you started before, what you've done now, and the results they've seen. And I think that comes from trying as early as you can to get access to all of their tools, right? So things like Google Analytics or embedding even directly in Search Console, any other, they might use third-party tools too. Embed directly in there and understand with them and make a clear plan of what are their KPIs, what metrics are important to them for the long term. And I think once you have that solidified from the early stages, you can then bring that back to the table to reference if they're on that verge of canceling, and you can really show them the bigger picture of sort of the changes you've made as a whole. And I think going back to our previous point too, it becomes easier to explain a lot of this when you're not just sort of a vendor for X amount of deliverables and that you're embedded in their strategy. So you can really understand their business as a whole, and when they have to adapt or change or pivot, you're always there to understand what was the strategy before and what does the strategy have to be moving forward that creates success for them. And I think that's really key to keeping people on and really being that strategic advisor for them.
Perfect. I can add on top that sometimes, even though you're doing the most amazing job with SEO and efforts, content, technical wise, there's a lot of things that are still depending because we're still an agency. We're still outside of the company. We're not able to push in terms of priority, things that can totally help if we're talking right now about the helpful content update and let's say EAT. And branding consistency and things like that. There's so much that you can do as a vendor, even though if you're integrated. And if the company is not doing that from their side, so basically, sometimes I would not say cancel. Sometimes I'm advising guys, if it's not something that you're getting into your priority, so maybe it's not worth it to invest with SEO right now because it's not even real priority. So, for instance, it's a non-known brand. It's some like a brand no one knows, no one will ever trust because no one hears about it. So I can drive traffic to this magazine blog on the website, but then again, why would everyone will bother buying from them? Or, for instance, I don't know, they have so many technical issues on their website, so many, like loading time 25 seconds, like whatever site is not really not optimized. They don't have any resources to solve this kind of a thing or priorities. So this is not something that I can handle by myself when I'm outside. I can point at this, I can bug them, hey, 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 but I cannot really solve it. Or for instance, there are posting content with no authorship, with no faces in, with no kind of a expertise, real expertise on their blog, which just like from ghostwriters, because this is what their budget have. So this is also something that we can point out and say, hey guys, let's not do that anymore because it's not going to cut it. We need actual expertise from your actual business. That will help us a lot more than just like a ghostwriting. So there's so much I think that we can point out, and the other way around from our side as well, because if something is not working, clearly not working, and the company really wants to invest with SEO, but they're not really investing with SEO. They just want to pay some vendor to do some magic, but the magic won't happen. It's like you can do a lot of things, but the magic won't happen in the end. So yeah, it's a lot of things that are basically surrounding with SEO strategy. And I think like it's also the other way around. So the client would say, hey, I want to cancel, which it's their own right, but it can be from our side as well. Like, guys, you need to cancel because it's not working. Really, it's not working. It's a waste of money for you. Just come to us when you're ready. It's like it will be more efficient. Because I think it's frustrating for both sides. It's like it's frustrating most of the times. So
no, that's a really good point.
It is frustrating. When things are not moving, or when you're asking things for, I don't know, because bigger companies with bigger priorities, with bigger pipelines, it's like sometimes I would say PPC landing pages are getting the most, let's say, priorities in terms of design, in terms of development, and then other things are getting down the loop, like going down in the pipeline. So these are the kind of things that are always like, hey, I need a push with that. Being close to your point of contact, which should be like a VP marketing director that can push things for you, even slowly, but to see some kind of a progress. This is something that us again as a professional, we need to point out and say, hey, you're losing it. Like right now, your core vitals are down. The website traffic is like starting to get like a really, I don't know, like a huge hit, because we're seeing the conversion rates are dropping, the loading time is dropping. What's going on? Let's fix that. So there's so much you can do in terms of that. There's so much you can do, and I think like us as a professionals, it's our way to just light things up for them, and just like, hey guys, we need to do that. We need to act. It's like a matter of priorities all the time. Bigger companies, but it's our role to bug them all the time.
Yeah, and I think that feeds right into what David was asking in the chat too. So, like on the flip side of cancelization, whatever word I'm trying to say, canceling, new word today. How do we prompt them to invest more into their strategy, especially if they feel like what they're spending already isn't producing the results that they thought they would get? But that could be because we told them they needed $1,000 budget, but they chose $500 budget or something like that. So how do we become convincing enough to like get them to invest more to get better or stronger results?
Go for it. Yeah.
Either one of you, I'm sure. Go ahead.
No, I think like we need to set expectations, because it's not that they will invest in no, sometimes it's not even in terms of budget, just in terms of resources. It's like that easy. But it's like it's not that they will just it's not like PPC, you're just going to pay for increasing your budget and you'll get more leads. It's not that. It's like a process. So we need to set expectations. We need to see, sometimes I look at what competitors are doing in terms of, their technology, in terms of the content cadence, in terms of, I don't know, technical problems that they have, backlinks gap, content gap. These are the kind of things that I'm always like educating. But, like it's at the end of the day, if it's, I don't like convincing anyone. It's like, it should be like something really, it's like something that, I'm more of educating guys. It's like, this is what's needed. It's like, this is what's needed. It's not about being greedy. This is what's needed. It's like something that you actually need to do. And it really works. It's like once they get it, that they have to invest their more budget with another developer resources, maybe to get another external resources, or maybe to hire another content, or to hire more positions with content. I think usually these are the kind of things that are painful for it's like still content measurement today. It's something that it's a little bit, you can measure content today, but for instance, I think like it's very difficult for clients still to actually measure it, to tie the actual blog post to an actual revenue. It's something that's a little bit more difficult for clients to understand. Also, attribution modules are not really activating with every kind of business. Not every business is going into attribution. So I think that this is like where education comes in, professionalism comes in, and saying, hey, this is what you need to go and invest time with your analytics tagging, with your developments, with your technical. And I think like once you invest this, let's say like setup, I would say, set up your site structure, set up your technical content strategy, content calendar, bring the actual team. In the end of the day, like when I'm looking 5 months from now, you'll be just like on a go, just like doing it. It's not supposed to be like in the same budget. It's like going to be like even totally less. You won't need your devs so much. The site will work. We just need to maintain the site, not to break all the time. So I work with multilingual sites all the time. So it's like a really, let's say, hectic work to keep them well all the time. It's like a huge problem. So I think like education, and letting them know what are the low-hanging fruits that we can achieve in a short time. And of course, set expectations from the right start. It's like, what are your goals are, it's like, this is it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I'm a big proponent of just having open and honest conversations as early as possible, and really identifying, just asking them to be transparent. What does success look like for you is a really important question for us when we're starting to engage with someone, and really understanding if their expectations are aligned with what's really possible in the market, because it will depend so heavily on how competitive the space is and what space you're working in the first place, right? So if they're looking to, if they're a brand new fintech startup and they're looking to compete with something like NerdWallet, and they want to be ranking #1 in the next 6 months, it's your job to tell them that that's probably not going to happen, and it's not realistic on that short of a time frame. And so you can really overcome a lot of those objections down the line by really just being more open and honest at the early stages. And you'll find that, you'll probably close less clients overall. You'll probably have, a slower sales pipeline because people, you're not over-promising the world. But when you do close those clients, they're going to stay much longer because they respect that open and honest transparency. And I think one of the key things and differentiators for agencies to understand is that, agencies get treated far worse than in-house people for sort of the same work. And I think it's key to understand that mindset of like, as an agency, you're usually kind of the first one that's blamed, the first one that's fired, the first one that's kind of pointed to when things are not going as expected. Whereas folks in-house tend to have a little more leeway or room to, get up to speed, to understand the business as a whole, to grow within the role. And so I think, switching your mindset, again, like what we talked about earlier, right? Switching your mindset from a vendor to, I'm coming in as a strategic partner, I'm here to learn about the business to help you guys grow, can really set yourself apart. And then just being overly communicative at all times on what you're doing, the strategy, and again, tying it back to those end goals that they have from the start.
That was such a great segment right there. Both of you, like that. What's really great takeaways, even for me, just to write down and revisit in the future of how to communicate properly and set expectations. I loved that. So I want to throw a new scenario at you. So what happens if you are doing everything right? Your campaigns are rocking and rolling, but the business you're marketing has really terrible customer service or sales department, and they're just, all your efforts are going to waste. How do you approach that situation?
Yeah, I like to usually do the same thing of having open and honest conversations without being too much of, playing the blame game or trying to point internally, because I know you can step on toes and egos can get in the way and things like that. But I think trying to paint a clear picture, again, using as much data as you possibly can there, showcasing, we're bringing in all of these leads, we're bringing in all of this traffic. here's what your rankings are now for those key pages we talked about a couple of months ago, and showing that, hey, we're increasing a massive amount of sales qualified leads, of signups. There's something broken there to where if you're not seeing on your end those converting or turning into paying customers, or maybe they're churning within the first 3 or 6 months, it's usually really an issue from, a customer service and onboarding perspective. And I think looping in their teams there where possible is always really helpful too. You can go back to a lot of that sales enablement that we talked about earlier, right? Of how do we communicate with customer service? Like, what issues are they seeing up front? And how can we potentially address some of that in the quality of leads we're driving? And so you can always sort of get analytics from them, data from them, saying these types of customers from this type of content or this sort of market that we serve tend to churn less, they stay longer, they spend more. And I think that can really inform your strategy going forward of, okay, now we need to double down in this area, right? We found that this segment of customers is really ones that find your product or service very sticky. They stay a long time, they spend a lot more. And so I think using that data and then going back to your own personal strategy and saying, okay, let's put these other segments to the side and focus on this one that's really producing long-lasting, high lifetime value customers for you.
Exactly. And also sometimes, when I refer to customer service or things like that, I am asking to talk about it with a superior person inside a company that's even C-level, that can actually move things around, because it's always like, if the manager of the customer service probably know that something is off, so I'm going to, let's say I'm going to go to the one person above him and just like to start showing him about bad reviews that people are writing about the company, how it's affecting our brand, how it's affecting things that are happening, in terms of, or all our marketing efforts are basically going down the drain because of that, and how it's affecting the branding. So usually I just like sit with them, educate them, showing our process, showing our goals, showing our wins, and how we are losing because of that, and create like some kind of an action items with them. Bring the manager in or the head of customer success, trying to create some kind of a plan. Let's say like internal education is key sometimes. Sometimes the customer service reps are tired. They have so many calls. They don't have any time. They are busy with KPIs. Maybe they don't believe in the brand. Maybe they don't understand things inside this brand. I don't know, maybe they had a very bad day and they're allowed, I don't know, to be like, I don't know, whatever they say, whatever they want to. So just like something where when you're involving with some person that is like a more superior, I think that along with the head of customer success, we can create like some kind of a plan for a cure together. And as well, like it shouldn't be like just the agency moving the things around. It should be like with your point of contact with VP marketing, because it's the best interest. It's not just SEO driving traffic, it's their PPC, which a lot of ad spend going to drain. And of course their PR efforts, and of course any other channel basically. So I think it's a matter of interest for all the channels to combine with such a plan and to bring out, it's like alert, hey, like you see like so many bad stars on Trustpilot. It's like, what is that? It's like, let's try and improve that. Let's start curing our messaging, or the way we talk, what kind of a thing that we're basically, let's say, people are talking about us as fraud company, or they don't pay me, or they are not answering their phones. Let's try and fix that. It's not good for us. So yeah, it's not one move from the SEO side or agency side. It's supposed to be something of an interest. All three, or let's say major channels that inside a marketing team.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when we decided to pursue careers in marketing, like none of this part like is not something that you think of. You're like, oh, I love writing, so maybe I'll go into content marketing, but you never think that you're going to be on this side of it, like having these conversations or something. And so Proximo asks in our chat, and we've covered it a couple of times, so I'm going to answer it, but then if you guys want to add anything. But they ask, what is the number one tip to manage expectations? And I think you both have said it a couple of times, and that's having those open and honest conversations. And at the first agency I worked at, I actually got a reputation for being this person. So I was like I could never be a salesperson because I was like too honest. But like the sales team would be like, Diana, can you like get on this call? Cause this guy, can you set him straight? Like, cause I would just have like the tough conversation. Like, and Jeremy, I love the example that you gave earlier about, this new fintech company wants to compete with NerdWallet. Okay, that's like opening a new shop online and wanting to compete with Amazon. Like, that's not a realistic goal. And so you have to be comfortable and confident enough to have those conversations and not be a jerk about it. But I mean, be honest, because then when they don't rank next to NerdWallet, they're already on the same plane, and they can understand that because you already had that conversation with them. So do you guys have any other number one tips for managing expectations besides the conversation piece?
Yeah, I think to add on to that real quick too is that try to get to the root problem as much as you can, and the root cause for where they want to end up, right? So if they say something like, I want to outrank NerdWallet for these terms, it's like, what is the actual end goal there, and what's the result that you get from that makes you think you want to outrank them in those certain categories, right? Is that you want that top level brand awareness for these terms? Are you trying to capitalize on like a specific segment of traffic? Is there another way that you can get those same results without sort of that difficulty of using a lot of your spend on certain things that may or may not pay off in the long run? So usually, trying to just pry and ask questions around what are their actual end goals, and like what does success look like to them? What makes them happy from an SEO perspective or a content perspective, whatever you're working within. So I think just trying to get to the root of the cause there and understanding like just beyond, everyone obviously wants their brand to rank number one for everything. And it's not actually like a real solidified goal. So you want to just break that down deeper and really understand the motivation behind it.
Yeah, I'm going to add on top of it that let's say I have a client that he really cares about design. He really cares about design. Like the entire website, it's like fully custom made, something like super beautiful that you've ever seen in your life. So it requires a lot of resources and required a lot of loading time as well. You cannot really possibly optimize this kind of a thing. And I told him about it when we first met. Listen, guys, like this is what, it's like going to hurt us down the road. We cannot really rank with this kind of website that's, I don't know, like super heavy, and we cannot even optimize it. So sorry. So all good, like, we set the expectations and we'll let it go. They're not optimizing the website, and they know it's going to be something that will hurt us down the road. But that's it. It's like, this is what I can do.
Yeah. I wanted to touch back on Jeremy's real quick too, because I have this saying too that like half of my job as a marketer is marketing, the other half is interpretation, and interpreting what their actual needs, goals, and motivations are between the lines. And you get really good at reading between the lines because of asking those questions, and you have to be invested enough to ask those questions so you know what you're doing for a marketing strategy. So you're like part interpreter, part investigative reporter, like part marketer, part performance, like reporting data magician, like all of these things again that we never thought we would have to do as marketers. I just think it's so funny how it evolves into all of these different things that we touch on simply because we wanted to help businesses grow.
Completely.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I have just one last question I want to ask so we can leave our terrific audience with some actionable next steps. Are there actually any actionable things that we can do as marketers to hand over the traffic as leads so the business can take it and run with it? Is there any easy way to do that we can, what I'm trying to say? Like, how can we make it as simple as possible to hand them the traffic and run with it?
Yeah, I think a good starting point is really assessing like first of all, what type of traffic are you driving mainly? Are your goals obviously, top of the funnel, or are they bottom of the funnel? That'll determine sort of obviously the quality of leads that are coming in. And then that'll also help you determine, whether or not you need to create something like a soft CTA, or if this is really a hard sell. And so that'll help you communicate much better with the sales team internally, with the marketing team internally, that okay, our main goals and our main service here is we're going to drive you a specific amount of leads at the bottom of the funnel, or maybe it's we're just going to build that top line awareness. And so that'll help you also, even potentially upsell services around like CRO and conversion optimization and creating lead magnets and CTAs and all these things that'll really determine, how well they're going to convert, and setting those expectations early based on the type of traffic you're driving is really going to be key. So I really like to identify early, is that main goal going to be top of the funnel or is it going to be bottom? And then that'll help you identify ways that you can solve that issue of those leads actually coming in and converting, talking to sales teams. Maybe it's things like, editing a form or changing how things are displayed, to even simple things like maybe they don't have good calls to action, or maybe the calls to action are actually not aligned with the type of traffic that's coming in, right? If they're trying to do a hard sell on something that's really informational, like a discovery piece of content, then those leads are really not going to move down that funnel. So I think helping them identify that and solving some of those key bottlenecks on their own side are really important.
Yeah, if I can add on top of it, any third-party services, they could just plug and play, and customize a little bit and make sure that they're creating user journeys with the third-party services. That is also something that you can do. I have like tools that I'm using right now, services that I'm using right now that the company can incorporate with and just create like the right user journey and measure it and create like clusters for their content. And it's working really beautifully to get the people down the funnel. And, some good recommendations around how to manage, review assets, how to manage different kind of assets. They have content hubs on the website. What are the actual things that they can do in terms of content on the website for different audiences, maybe? So yeah, totally.
All right. Well, that is about it for today on that note. And so for everyone that tuned in live, thank you guys for spending an hour with us. That went about as perfect as it could possibly have gone. Thank you so much to you, Liraz and Jeremy, for joining us today. I've been wanting to talk about this topic for ages, and you two are just absolutely perfect to join me in that conversation. So thank you so, so, so much. Thank you for being SEMrush friends and for being part of my universe too. And for everyone rewatching this, I hope you guys got something really cool out of it. And I hope everyone is staying safe and fun and you enjoy the turn of the new seasons and have a great day and all of those wonderful things.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank
having
you guys.
us.
All right, bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.